Turning to the extremely complicated area of the Near East, we can see a similar pattern. Islamic civilization, which began about AD 500, culminated in the Ottoman Empire in the period 1300 to 1600 and has been in the process of being destroyed by invaders from Western civilization since about 1750. Expressed in this way, these patterns in the life cycles of various civilizations may seem confused. But if we tabulate them, the pattern emerges with some simplicity. From this table a most extraordinary fact emerges. Of approximately 20 civilizations which have existed in all of human history, we have listed 16. Of these 16, 12, possibly 14, are already dead or dying, their cultures destroyed by outsiders able to come in with sufficient power to disrupt the civilization, destroy its established modes of thought and action, and eventually wipe it out. Of these 12 dead or dying cultures, 6 have been destroyed by Europeans bearing the culture of Western civilization. When we consider the untold numbers of other societies, simpler than civilizations, which Western civilization has destroyed or is now destroying, societies such as the Hottentots, the Iroquois, the Tasmanians, the Navajos, the Caribs, and countless others, the full frightening power of Western civilization becomes obvious. One cause, although by no means the chief cause, of the ability of Western civilization to destroy other cultures rests on the fact that it has been expanding for a long time. This fact, in turn, rests on another condition to which we have already alluded, the fact that Western civilization has passed through 3 periods of expansion, has entered into an age of conflict 3 times, each time has had its core area conquered almost completely by a single political unit, but has failed to go on to the age of the universal empire because from the confusion of the age of conflict there emerged each time a new organization of society capable of expanding by its own organizational powers, with the result that the 4 phenomena characteristic of the age of conflict, decreasing rate of expansion, class conflicts, imperialist wars, irrationality, were gradually replaced once again by the 4 kinds of expansion typical of an age of expansion: demographic, geographic, production, knowledge. From a narrowly technical point of view, this shift from an age of conflict to an age of expansion is marked by a resumption of the investment of capital and the accumulation of capital on a large scale, just as the earlier shift from the age of expansion to the age of conflict was marked by a decreasing rate of investment and eventually by a decreasing rate of accumulation of capital. Western civilization began, as all civilizations do, in a period of cultural mixture. In this particular case it was a mixture resulting from the barbarian invasions which destroyed classical civilization in the period 350–700. By creating a new culture from the various elements offered from the barbarian tribes, the Roman world, the Saracen world, and above all the Jewish world, Christianity, Western civilization became a new society. This society became a civilization when it became organized, in the period 700–970, so that there was accumulation of capital and the beginnings of the investment of this capital in new methods of production. These new methods are associated with a change from infantry forces to mounted warriors in defense, from manpower, and thus slavery, to animal power and energy use, from the scratch plough and 2-field, fallow agricultural technology of Mediterranean Europe to the 8-oxen, gang plough and 3-field system of the Germanic peoples, and from the centralized, state-centered political orientation of the Roman world to the decentralized, private power feudal network of the medieval world. In the new system a small number of men, equipped and trained to fight, received dues and services from the overwhelming majority of men who were expected to till the soil. From this inequitable but effective defensive system emerged an inequitable distribution of political power and, in turn, an inequitable distribution of the social-economic income. This, in time, resulted in an accumulation of capital, which, by giving rise to demand for luxury goods of remote origin, began to shift the whole economic emphasis of the society from its earlier organization in self-sufficient agrarian units, manors, to commercial interchange, economic specialization, and, by the 13th century, to an entirely new pattern of society with towns, a bourgeois class, spreading literacy, growing freedom of alternative social choices, and new, often disturbing, thoughts. From all this came the first period of expansion of Western civilization, covering the years 9701 to 70. At the end of this period, the organization of society was becoming a petrified collection of vested interests, investment was decreasing, and the rate of expansion was beginning to fall. Accordingly, Western civilization, for the first time, entered upon the age of conflict. This period, the time of the 100 Years' War, the Black Death, the Great Heresies, and severe class conflicts, lasted from about 1270 to 1420. By the end of it, efforts were arising from England and Burgundy to conquer the eve of Western civilization. But, just at that moment, a new age of expansion, using a new organization of society which circumvented the old vested interests of the feudal manorial system, began. This new age of expansion, frequently called the period of commercial capitalism, lasted from about 1440 to about 1680. The real impetus to economic expansion during the period came from efforts to obtain profits by the interchange of goods, especially semi-luxury or luxury goods, over long distances. In time, this system of commercial capitalism became petrified into a structure of vested interests in which profits were sought by imposing restrictions on the production or interchange of goods rather than by encouraging these activities. This new vested interest structure, usually called mercantilism, became such a burden on economic activities that the rate of expansion of economic life declined and even gave rise to a period of economic decline in the decades immediately following 1690. The class struggles and imperialist wars engendered by this age of conflict are sometimes called the Second 100 Years' War. The wars continued until 1815, and the class struggles even later. As a result of the former, France by 1810 had conquered most of the eve of Western civilization. But here, just as had occurred in 1420 when England had also conquered part of the core of the civilization toward the latter portion of an age of conflict, the victory was made meaningless because a new period of expansion began. Just as commercial capitalism had circumvented the petrified institution of the feudal manorial system, chivalry, after 1440, so industrial capitalism circumvented the petrified institution of commercial capitalism, mercantilism, after 1820. The new age of expansion which made Napoleon's military political victory of 1810 impossible to maintain had begun in England long before. It appeared as the agricultural revolution about 1725 and as the industrial revolution about 1775, but it did not get started as a great burst of expansion until after 1820. Once started, it moved forward with an impetus such as the world had never seen before, and it looked as if Western civilization might cover the whole globe. The dates of this third age of expansion might be fixed at 1770 to 1929, following upon the second age of conflict of 1690 to 1815. The social organization which was at the center of this new development might be called industrial capitalism. In the course of the last decade of the 19th century, it began to become a structure of vested interests to which we might give the name, monopoly capitalism. As early, perhaps, as 1890, certain aspects of a new age of conflict, the third in Western civilization, began to appear, especially in the core area, with a revival of imperialism, of class struggle, of violent warfare, and of irrationalities. By 1930 it was clear that Western civilization was again in an age of conflict. By 1942 a semi-peripheral state, Germany, had conquered much of the core of the civilization. That effort was defeated by calling into the fray a peripheral state, the United States, and another, outside civilization, the Soviet Society. It is not yet clear whether Western civilization will continue along the path marked by so many earlier civilizations, or whether it will be able to reorganize itself sufficiently to enter upon a new, fourth, age of expansion. If the former occurs, this age of conflict will undoubtedly continue with the fourfold characteristics of class struggle, war, irrationality, and declining progress. In this case, we shall undoubtedly get a universal empire in which the United States will rule most of Western civilization. This will be followed, as in other civilizations, by a period of decay and ultimately, as the civilization grows weaker, by invasions and the total destruction of Western culture. On the other hand, if Western civilization is able to reorganize itself and enters upon a fourth age of expansion, the ability of Western civilization to survive and go on to increasing prosperity and power will be bright. Leaving aside this hypothetical future, it would appear thus that Western civilization, in approximately 1500 years, has passed through 8 periods, thus. 1. Mixture 350-700. 2. Gestation, 700-970. 3a. First expansion, 9701-70. 4a. First conflict, 1270-1440. Core Empire, England, 1420. 3b. Second expansion, 1440-1690. 4b. Second conflict, 1690-1815. Core Empire, France, 1810. 3c. Third expansion, 1770-1929. 4c. Third conflict, 1893. Core Empire, Germany, 1942. The two possibilities which lie in the future can be listed as follows. Reorganization, continuation of the process. 3d. Fourth expansion, 1944, 5. Universal Empire, the United States 6. Decay. 7. Invasion, end of the civilization. From the list of civilizations previously given, it becomes somewhat easier to see how Western civilization was able to destroy, or is still destroying, the cultures of 6 other civilizations. In each of these 6 cases the victim civilization had already passed the period of universal empire and was deep in the age of decay. In such a situation Western civilization played a role as invader similar to that played by the Germanic tribes in classical civilization, by the Dorians in Cretan civilization, by the Greeks in Mesopotamian or Egyptian civilization, by the Romans in Canaanite civilization, or by the Aryans in Indic civilization. The Westerners who burst in upon the Aztecs in 1519, on the Incas in 1534, on the Mughal Empire in the 18th century, on the Manchu Empire after 1790, on the Ottoman Empire after 1774, and on the Tokugawa Empire after 1853 were performing the same role as the Visigoths and the other barbarian tribes to the Roman Empire after 377. In each case, the results of the collision of 2 civilizations, one in the age of expansion and the other in the age of decay, was a foregone conclusion. Expansion would destroy decay. In the course of its various expansions Western civilization has collided with only one civilization which was not already in the stage of decay. This exception was its half-brother, so to speak, the civilization now represented by the Soviet Empire.